Okay, Dreamer Plays.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be checking out the tier list after 10 months of the game's launch. It's been a while since I did the previous tier list, about 4 months, and we have new heroes added to the entire tier list. So this is gonna be quite a big change since the previous one, okay? But first off, we have our god tier, which is the Resistors, okay? These are used regardless of mode. Whenever you meet a boss that deals a particular debuff, for example burn, you are definitely gonna need Gilahan there, okay, or you're gonna have Adele to go against enemies that freeze you, and so on and so forth. So these heroes are not gonna be appearing in the tier list below because they are so exclusive in their own rights, okay, that's why they are in the top position in the entire tier list. Next up, we have the scenario heroes. So this is the SS tier for scenario heroes. If you are using any combination of this, okay, I won't say any combination, but maybe a combination which includes a healer, a tank, and 2 damage dealers, or 1 damage dealer and 1 debuffer, I think you're good to go in most scenario and celestial tower situations, okay? So main DPS of course will involve Cosette, or Dylan's, or Shane, or now many people have Ruri maxed out, okay, for newer players, so Ruri can be a potential damage dealer for you if you don't have the other L plus heroes. Evan plus is a great damage dealer as well, especially right now after his auto skill change. He has become very efficient in damage dealing, so that's really good. Adele has seen a lot of use in the past couple of months, especially with the new scenarios coming out. I think Adele is one of the best melee damage dealers by a far shot, okay? Of course, he needs to be coupled with Rachel, and I think if you run any one of these with Lena, okay, or sometimes you may even need Shay to cycle your ultimates, I think you have a very good shot at clearing most of the scenarios. So these are all the SS tier heroes for scenario. Moving on to the S tier, we have some new faces which include Jave, Rin, Gilahan, and Taka. Okay, so for these heroes, they may not be used as much, or maybe only in very specific situations, okay, but Rin has the ability to blind, which can come in pretty handy, especially if you're dealing with AoE mobs, for example in Celestial Tower, or maybe just clearing the scenario fields pretty quickly. Gilahan has quite a specific use. He's used against Carl in Hell difficulty, if I'm not wrong, okay, for the attack down, so that's gonna be pretty helpful. And then we have Miss Velvet, who has fallen off the damage dealer list, okay, she's no longer the strongest, completely overshadowed by Adele and Rachel. Jave, I'm not too sure if he's used that much in scenario itself, but you know, based on his skills, he can potentially help you clear the regular mobs very quickly as well, and he is a pretty good tank overall. Taka can be used as a support if you have him along with your single target damage dealer with Rudy and Lena, for example. That could be one possible combination you want to run, okay? And then we have the A tier, which are heroes that used to be used but are no longer used, but if you are a new player, you could still use them, okay, in your runs. We have Velda for the pool, okay, mainly for pooling, nothing else. And then the single target damage dealers include Cheng Chen and Scott, which is newly added to the tier list as well. Scott is a pretty decent mid-tier single target damage dealer. Luki for speed if you need, or range damage. And then Tristan, he's a decent tank as well, okay, in maybe lower difficulties. Claire if you need a buff removal, okay, because she's still pretty good at that, okay, especially if you don't have the other L plus heroes, or you don't have certain L heroes that have buff removal, then somehow you have a Claire, you can actually use Claire. Windigo is still here because he's good against Kasdam, yes, yeah, so he is there just for that. Okay, so moving on to Field Expedition. Field Expedition wise, for normal Field Expedition, I don't have a particular tiering for these heroes, but you can use almost any hero, okay, for Field Expedition. These heroes are just grouped according to their usage. So first you have the tanks, okay, especially if you're doing Hell. If you're strong enough, for sure you don't need a tank, okay, you can use 4 damage dealers, that would be great enough. But if you're not strong enough for hell difficulty, then I think a tank hero could be important in terms of you not taking too much damage. Okay, then we have a healer as well, especially Alice and Lena. They do increase movement speed, so that's very good for Field Expedition in terms of clearing quickly. Of course, some of you may be using the offline Field Expedition method. Okay, so these heroes don't really matter at all you need to do is clear one particular run and you're good to go. So with regards to that one particular run, sometimes you may want to run more AoE oriented heroes, which include all these. Okay, all these are all AoE oriented heroes, with Kid Shane being one of the must-haves in that particular team because she is so efficient in helping you clear very fast, giving your entire team a huge boost in terms of damage output, okay, and speed. And then we have single target damage dealers because for some reason if you encounter the boss, maybe these heroes can help you there, okay. And if you're not actively using the offline method, you're still doing an online method, okay, then these single target damage dealers will be more important for your consideration, especially if you meet a hell boss. It's going to be very difficult to take him down, so you cannot rely on just simply your AoE damage dealers. You will need a single target damage dealer, okay. For greater Field Expedition, my personal suggestion is that you should be using your greater maps, okay, at a lower difficulty. So technically, these heroes don't really matter as well because at a higher difficulty, you will be using too many greater maps for too little loot. Okay, the loot in particular I'm referring to are the tickets. So by doing Field Expedition in lower difficulties, you actually are able to get more tickets because you're using less maps. So it prolongs your farming in that sense, and you are able to, just farm more tickets in general. So technically in lower difficulty, none of these heroes matter because it's so easy, you just proc them and they die. Okay, the boss dies. But if you really want to challenge yourself for some reason to clear a higher difficulty, greater map boss, okay, then definitely go with single target damage dealers and a tank and a healer, because from what I've heard, I have not personally tried, these bosses are very strong. Okay, so you definitely need to go in with a proper team, which includes your Cosette, or Evan. All these single target damage dealers would be great. If you want to go with a melee comp, you can use Adele with Rachel. The reason why Adele is actually in the S tier, as I mentioned previously, is because he needs to be paired with Rachel. Okay, so because of this particular condition, I kind of left him in the S tier. But if you want to, if you have him with Rachel, he's definitely SS tier material. Okay, Kate is a great tank. Okay, as we all mentioned, he has taunt, and then he's able to cycle his immunity very quickly if you give him the right gear. So in that case, he will technically be completely immune to the boss damage, and he'll be taunting as well. So that's gonna be helpful for you in not taking too much damage against those very strong bosses. So in the S tier, we also have Scott here. Okay, another mid tier damage dealer, single target damage dealer with movement speed and attack speed as well for himself. And then we also have Taka, who is basically kind of like a support for single target damage increase. Okay, Noho is here because I don't think she's as efficient as the other single target damage dealers in terms of clearing. She is very strong, but in terms of damage over time, in a very short period of time, I think the other damage dealers could be doing more damage than Noho herself. Okay, so Gilahan could be a tank if you need. Okay, so these are just some considerations you can have if you do want to, attack the higher difficulty greater maps. And I left 3 here, some alternatives if you really don't have anyone in the SS tier or S tier. Okay. Next up, we move to 4-man raids. So for 4-man raids, I think it's still pretty much the same idea, because 4-man raids tend to have more limited team compositions than you can for other content. Okay, so because you do need a suppressor. Okay, if you are still not able to clear the raids as a newer player, you do need a suppressor. You also need a healer. Okay, and maybe you need a tank. Not too sure. Maybe you need a tank. Okay, otherwise you can go with a debuffer and have a single target damage dealer. So of course, single target damage dealing wise, Cosette, Shane, Evan are the best. Okay, of course Dylan's with his EE is also increased in utility because he hits very hard now. And then your two debuffers, Rachel and Chris, either one is fine depending on which composition you're using. If you're running a more melee oriented comp, you can go with Rachel. Range comp, go with Chris. Okay, and Adele of course for single target damage. The other these five are mainly for suppressor usage, so they are in the SS tier for that particular reason. And then of course our two best healers in the game for PVE content will include Lina and Karin, although Karin is less used right now, okay, because I think heroes are power creeping a bit more, you know, just getting stronger overall, so you don't really need to revive. Rather, you can rely on Lina for increased damage output to clear your raid faster, okay? The S tier, we do have those second grade damage dealers, which include Noho, Miss Velvet, Taka, and these two. Okay, why is Yonhee there? Yonhee is there primarily for the Nastra Shane raid. I know many people do not use Yonhee at all, and even at launch, but for some reason, if you don't have a good single target damage dealer and you find difficulty in clearing the Nastra Shane raid, Yonhee is a great hero there because of her AoE skills. She can kill those little balls very quickly for you, so you won't be taking too much damage from Nastra Shane. And then of course, Windigo is also a suppressor there. I've also placed the secondary suppressors in the S tier in case you do not have the best suppressors. These two, very strongly not recommended, and because Rachel is free and used in Lizardra raid with Iota as a secondary suppressor, I really don't see a need for you to use her, okay? And Lan as well. I think many people by now should have R+ Lan, so the common Lan really shouldn't be used at all, but you know, just placed here for reference. And then we have the Saleos raid. Okay, Saleos raid, right now if you are an endgame player, you should be clearing it without too much difficulty with just, you know, 4 damage dealers, 1 tank, you may not even need the tank, 1 debuffer and 2 healers. That would be great. Okay, 2 healers meaning Lina and Shay. Shay for out recycling, and also Lina for the heals and damage increase. Of course you want a suppressor, but even suppressor wise, sometimes you may not need it if you are very strong. Okay, but for players who are still progressing and trying to clear Saleos raid, a suppressor is definitely needed at T15 raid because there's nowhere to run. Prior to that, you may want to deal without a suppressor. You can run to the empty slot to hide. Okay, so yeah, mainly you will want 4 damage dealers, and I think the best damage dealers here include Cosette, Evan Plus, Adele, Shane. Okay, then the rest, depending on if you have more slots or if you're stronger, you want more damage, you can try including others. Same thing here for the S tier. Okay, these are second grade damage dealers, I feel, Miss Velvet and Noho. And Taka is definitely a support hero in this case because Taka is going to boost single target damage. So he's going to help your Cosette, your Shane, your Evan Plus do more damage, and even Adele. Okay, so he's actually a pretty decent hero in Saleos. Okay, I may even bump him to the SS tier in future, depending on what other heroes come out, because we are going to get more single target damage heroes in the future, so he will definitely pair very well with them. Kagura is new here. Okay, not seen prior to this. Kagura mainly because she is a healer who also buffs crit damage when she heals, okay, on one particular skill of course. So in this case, she can actually be used in Saleos raid. If you are taking damage, Kagura can be used to heal you and also buff your DPS's damage output. So that's gonna be very good for you as well. Okay, even though she's a PvP hero. And of course, these are the really second grade kind of damage dealer if you do not have L+ damage dealers. Okay, I placed these in the A tier because they are really not used but can be used. Okay, for Dina Eileen for attack increase, Yonhee for defense down, but you know, she's more of a debuffer in this case, not a damage dealer. Melissa for the heals and other debuffs that she applies, and then we have these two R heroes that are probably the best damage dealers in the R tier. Okay. Then we have Catastrophe. So for Catastrophe rate, to be honest, I did not include any S tier or A tier because I feel that at this point, these are the heroes that you should be running with. Okay, without these heroes, I think if you want to have an AoE damage dealer inside, it's also possible, but really, if you just put all the best healers you have in the team with your best tanks, I think you won't die at all. Okay, so yeah, there's no S tier and A tier, just these heroes. Okay, all in the SS tier, they are extremely good for your Catastrophe rate. I would say Shay is the best one. She's completely made for the Catastrophe rate, so she should be there. And then we have Lina, your 2 tanks for Lynx. Okay, Lynx are actually very helpful in Catastrophe rate, so Lina and Rudy definitely must-haves as well. And then the rest are pretty optional. I think Alice is good for heals and attack speed, movement speed. Karin, of course, if in case anyone dies, she can always heal up. Okay, revive. And Shay is just key in many PVE content for the out recycling. Okay. Finally, we have the new content for Orochi raid. So for Orochi raid, this is going to be the lineup that I would recommend. Okay, these 12 heroes, you can kind of also use the same idea whereby you use 4 damage dealers, 2 healers, 1 debuffer, and 1 suppressor. Suppressor being Tio, okay, or Cheng Chen in the S tier, as you can see there in the corner. 1 debuffer, you can use Rachel or Chris, or if you want, you can use both, okay, because they kind of act as secondary single target damage dealers as well. And then healers, I would strongly recommend Karin and Lina, okay, for revive in case something goes wrong, because they are quite strong and there's not many areas you can run to, okay, sometimes. So Karin revive is going to be very helpful. Lina is for damage output. Of course, Shay is great as well, and I don't have to talk about the best damage dealers in the game, okay. Next up, for the S tier though, we do have Alice as a great healer as well, healer complementing the team for movement speed as well, for attack speed. Taka is also great for single target damage increase. Then the tanks, I don't know if anyone actually runs tanks in Orochi raid, but the Lynx could potentially help you. Okay, so that's why I placed them in the S tier, because they are kind of optional. But if you want, you could run them, maybe just 1 tank will do. And then yeah, these 3. Okay, then we have guild raid. So prior to this tier list, okay, I didn't split up the 3 guild raids. It was previously all just similar to how I presented the rest of the modes. It was more or less just concise. But now I split them up, so please read these by the roles. So I placed the suppressors right at the front so that you know which dragon I'm referring to. So for the first role, that's for Thunder Dragon, you need Noho. Okay, you need Noho for a high score. Chris is also a must in this particular raid. Then you can either use Cosette or Ruri, depending on if you're using Cosette elsewhere. If you're not, then Cosette can be used here over Ruri. And the final spot goes to one of the last 3 heroes here, or maybe 4, Lina included. Okay, depending on if you're not using them anywhere else, then I would strongly suggest you can actually use one of them. Alice being a healer, a great healer, and movement speed increase and attack speed increase. Kagura for crit damage increase, and since you have a crit buffer here, I think she goes really well with the heroes in the Thunder raid. And then you have Taka, who increases single target damage. So the best frontliner, to be honest, is actually Taka. Okay, I'm sure you've seen videos of Taka being used there by pro players. Okay, but if you are not very confident or if you are not very skilled, you can always run a healer. So Alice is also preferred, or Kagura, depending on where you're using them. For the Silent Dragon, Gilahan is a must. And then we have Rachel and Adele being the best heroes there. Kagura is actually the best healer there, and also the crit damage buffer. Okay, the other 3 are subjected to your personal preferences. If you don't have Adele, you can always run Evan here. Okay, and then if you are lacking a healer, you can always use Alice or Karin here for the attack. Karin for attack down. I think Alice does the same as well. Yeah, so you can actually use either one of them for attack down, and I think that will help your entire run a lot as well. And then finally for the Fear Dragon, we have Seek as a must, okay, for the suppression. Lina, Cosette and Shay technically makes the best team for this dragon. But if you can't use Cosette here, you can always use Evan Plus here instead, okay? And then some people also run Rudy because of the links. The links help a lot. And then because, another reason could be because they run Lina in the Thunder Dragon. So because of that, they need links, and the links help a lot because of the purple aura moving around. Yeah, so that really helps to spread out the damage across your team so that you won't die too quickly without the links. And then for the S tier, okay, I've also put the secondary resistor in the S tier. So for example, you don't have Henry, you need to run Henry. If you don't have Noho, you need to run Henry Plus. Luki, Karin, and Claire were all used before the best team came out, before Ruri came out. So these are options you want to explore as well. And then for the Silence and Fear Dragon, you can actually use melee damage dealers here. Ian is actually pretty good in the Silence rate because he does increase crit rate. He also heals you, he also decreases damage you take and increases damage. So Ian is actually very decent in silent rate. And then for Theon, he's the secondary resistor. Now the reason why I didn't put Velder in the S tier, even though he is the secondary silence resistor, is because I feel that in the past we didn't actually need a silence resistor, and we could deal a lot of damage even without Velder. So that is why I feel that Velder's usage is actually less important than Henry Plus and Theon. Okay, so again, I've put several options here. Claire is here for buff removal because the Thunder Dragon does cast an attack increase buff on himself. So if you want to avoid too much damage being taken, you can use Claire. I believe the Legend Claire is also there. And then for Shay, she's a great healer and reviver. So in case you need reviving, you can actually use Legend Shay here. And then for the Fear Dragon, in fact, you can use Yonhee. You can also use Luki for movement speed. Okay, Serena is also possible for the heals. So yeah, these were actually heroes that I used to use in the past. So if you're just starting out as a newer player, these are some options you can try. And then we have the dungeons. So all 4 dungeons have also been changed. Now if you see the gold dungeon, finally Carl makes his first appearance in the tier list here. He is a good fixed damage dealer because he deals damage every third attack. So that's going to be very, very helpful for you when you're dealing with the piranhas. Velda for the pools, Ming for AoE. Most of the heroes here are all AoE damage dealing. I've kind of removed Spike from this list, and I think Juju as well. Previously they were here. The reason for that is because they do have one single target skill, and I think that having them now when there are other heroes around is going to slow down your run. So if you can, try to use heroes with more AoE based skills, okay, which include a lot of the newer heroes here. Okay, then we have the Soul Shard dungeon, which you will need range heroes because you cannot use melee heroes. So Cosette, Chris, Noho, Ruri are great options. Okay, Claire as well. Lina and Shay are definitely must-haves, I would say. Okay, they will occupy the 2 spots in your team in order for you to quickly out-recycle and smack the golem very quickly. For the Elixir and Rune dungeon, you can pretty much use the same teams. Okay, you can either go with a range comm or a melee comm depending on your preferences. Taka is also great here for increased damage, and of course we have Scott as one of the newer mid-tier damage dealers. You may decide to run a tank if you are taking too much damage. Okay, Shay and Lina again are one of the 2 must-haves I feel in these dungeons. And then we have the EXP dungeon, which primarily focuses on melee heroes. So one of the better teams for auto-wing, I would say, would include Rudy, Lina for double links. Okay, and then you can actually run a debuffer Rachel and maybe one other single target damage dealer. Okay, so yeah, that would be the best team for EXP dungeon. Now moving on to PvP. Okay, so PvP over the past couple of months I think has been very clear cut in a way, whereby you have a very obvious tank comp, which is the ones you see in the first line, and you have a very obvious burst comp, the speed comp, which is what you will see in the second line. However, Karma and Teo do appear in both kind of comps, so they are possibly the most flexible heroes in the meta right now. That is why I gave them an even more special square around them. Okay, so these two are the most flexible. They can be used in the tank comp, they can also be used in the burst comp depending on your preferences. Jave is strictly in tank comp, with sometimes you will see him with Alice or Karin, Karma and Rudy, and then or you can, with Carl now, he is pretty much the damage dealer in the tank comp. He helps to melt other tank comps. Okay, Carl doesn't really go well with a burst comp. He's more commonly used in the tank comps, okay, to deal with other tank comps. So with Ace, with his EE now, we have seen a huge return of Ace. So now the burst comps do comprise of Ace, Teo, Rin, and Dylan's, or Ace, Teo, Rin, Yuri, or Ace, Teo, Rin, Karma. We also do have some variants with Ace, Teo, Rin, Fodina, okay, but less people use Fodina. Also because Dylan's is able to aim down range heroes very quickly, so which Fodina Eileen cannot do, so that is why Dylan's is preferred in most situations. Okay, so in the S tier we do have Shane. She used to be the damage dealer for the tank comps, okay, depending on your formation as well. And I think because of Carl, she has taken a back seat, but she's still strong, just that she's not really seen as much in the top tiers. Bai Jiao is new, okay, I think he could be a very good hero in tank comps or CC comps, which we don't really see that much yet. Okay, so maybe with his release, and maybe once it's built out more people start trying out different comps, and then we will see how his utility goes in the global meta. Orochi is actually pretty decent, okay, she's used very well in Guild War. Not so much in PvP itself, because there are other better heroes and you only just need one team, but if you do need other teams, maybe even for tag match, Orochi definitely is one of the better heroes, better range heroes to consider having on your secondary teams. And Espada is kind of paired with Chris, but there are some teams which I've seen in the top tier PvP meta that don't use Espada with Chris. There's also this Ace team with Chris, which is I think Ace, Chris, Karma, Teo, yeah, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, there's actually some teams that run that. Even with Orochi as well, it's also possible. So Espada is not a must-have even with Chris, but she's a decent option. And these heroes have fallen far too low to be seen at the top tiers. Okay, I think they're practically not used at all, but in lower tiers I think they will still make an impact in their own rights. So definitely worth the consideration for lower tier players. And finally we have a new mode, Maze, which is the new mode added very recently. For Maze itself, I don't have a specific tiering as well, because Maze is technically ever changing. It's going to change every 2 weeks. There's going to be new enemies, there's going to be different heroes, different specified heroes, which is why you don't see Noho here. Okay, but just based on some research, okay, I kind of narrowed down to these heroes which I think will last very long because they have a particular use. Okay, so for AoE damage dealers, very strong damage dealers, AoE wise, you have Ace, Teo, Rin, Yuri, and Yonhee. Yonhee is also there for defense down, so in case you do need a debuffer and an AoE damage dealer, she's great there. And despite this being a more PvP based mode, you can also use single target damage dealers to really nuke down a particular enemy which is causing a lot of trouble for you. So in this case, single target damage dealers such as Cosette, Evan, Shane plus Adele, Dylan's can all be used, and Cosette is even used in this particular season that we have. Okay, some players are using her to deal with the annoying Claire in floor 10, right? So this is a particular option that can be explored. Then we have the control heroes. What I mean by control heroes is that these heroes do have particular effects that disable the enemy so that they won't be able to deal as much damage back to you. For example, you have Orochi who silences continuously, and this makes the enemy not able to apply the skills on you. You have Spike as well who applies this freeze. You have Juju and Baijiao who applies the mutation. Baijiao is particularly good if you saw my live stream. He has a lot of utility in Labyrinth, and which is why I feel that this could potentially translate to PvP, maybe in the mid tiers. Okay, Nestra Shane, although I didn't see her being used, but she does have pretty good utility as well. Okay, so I think if there's a chance, I think she'll be great in Labyrinth as well, especially for players who do not have certain heroes. Claire and Fodina for the same reasons. For Shock, Claire has Stun. Claire also has, what's that? Shackle, yeah, Shackle. So these enemies in Labyrinth, they are not immune to these effects. Okay, so you can actually apply effects on them to try to mitigate the damage taken or try to take the opportunity to fight back. And of course, Ming for ultimate control, ultimate gauge control, and then Karma for skill cooldown increase. Okay. We also have the healers, so there are 4 very good healers you can use. 3 good tanks and 2 debuffers. If you do need for killing certain single enemies, okay, debuffing a particular single enemy could be very clutch. So that's all I have for this tier list. I hope it helped, and if it did, do give it a like, do give this video a like, and of course subscribe to the channel. And I would like to say you can download the tier list in the Discord link in the description. And big shout out to my channel members: Jeremy, Chilling, Gonzalo, Jude, Nick, Yamaki, Kevin, Harlan, Zon for the support. Stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much and see you!